And afterwards, if I don't have a chance to talk to you, or if you have any additional questions or want any of the additional information, statistics, things like that, I have some of my cards on the table here, so please feel free to email me. Thank you, and I'd love to take questions.
Okay.
I think I'll even come down here. I think they might reset the stage.
I got a little confused early on when you showed the one statistic about Black and Latino composers' work still being zero in terms of access or what orchestras are using. Did I understand that properly? That
It's actually the artistic administrators in orchestras. Basically, across America, statistically, none of the artistic administrators, the staff at orchestras, are Black or Latino. The works that orchestras perform, it's less than 1% of the actual works they perform are by composers of color. And so we're working to try to address that through our commissioning consortium, where we have, on any given year, anywhere from 10 to 14 orchestras, and we join together and commission a major new work by a composer of color. And then we also do our own separate commissioning, too. We have a number of different partnerships. The kind of core partnership is what we call our professional development program. And basically, orchestras make a commitment to provide a solo performance opportunity for our top laureate at some point in that year. There's a lot that goes along with that. First and foremost, for us, we have broadcast copy of the laureates because the finals are broadcast, and we actually ask and require that our laureate meet the artistic merit requirements for the orchestra for any soloist they would have, regardless of their cultural background. Something that's very important to us, and that sense of artistic excellence runs through all of our programming. To give you a sense with our competition itself, we actually instruct our jurors. They're not trying to look at this pool of Black and Latino musicians and rank them, but they are trying to find those amongst this pool who rise and play at the highest level regardless of cultural background, then provide them appropriate awards. So there have been different years of the competition where our jury has actually not given out certain awards in certain divisions because they felt that musicians didn't rise to the level that we had in terms of expectations. In terms of orchestras, in addition to kind of that core component of a performance, a lot of our partnerships go much deeper. So we'll bring our laureates out into the community at that particular orchestra. And we have several programs that do that. And we train all of our laureates to actually be teaching artists. So we find that some orchestras kind of, laureate comes in, they do a performance, it's pretty brief. And others, they may be there for a week doing a lot of outreach and deep work with the community. And then the orchestra may even bring that particular laureate back.
What percentage, you may have addressed this and I didn't catch it, but what percentage of the young people that you work with go on to pursue professional careers as classical musicians or in the field of classical music?
With the competition that we have, basically virtually almost 100% go on to music school and then some type of career in the arts and in music. In our preparatory music or our overture programs, it's a small minority of the students who will end up as professionals in music. And actually with our Preparatory Music Institute and our overture program, our goal is not musical development. It's actually youth development. And we're really using music education as the tool to achieve youth development objectives. So when we actually look at our criteria, Afa Siddiqui is our Vice President of Programming here, and we look at and gauge our success, we're looking at graduation rates, we're looking at college matriculation, we're looking at retention. Those are the kind of key factors for us. We do look at certain things in terms of reading key signature, time signature, those types of things, but they're secondary to the youth development goals.
Do you still play yourself?
I often get this question, and so as you're about to hear from our Cows Quartet, it is, I don't perform in public, and the reason is I don't really get time to practice. And as you could hear Randall, for example, our kids are really awesome. So if I didn't measure up, I'd be in big trouble. So I don't have the time to practice. I still do some, kind of artistic outlets, but not where they're under scrutiny.
Aaron, I have a
Great question.
I have a question.
Yes, yes.
Are you interacting, or do you have any kind of plan or suggestions with public schools and advocacy work in that area? How does that work? It's huge, I know, but.
Yeah, of course, it's a great question, and we could spend a whole day on it. I would say that we do what we can in terms of advocating, and it really comes down to two things. Number one, we focus on what can we do, and even though it's filling oftentimes small gaps in what is a huge chasm of a lack of exposure and early music instruction, we look at what can we do, and then we do it and do it at the highest level we can. The second is that we really try to influence families and communities, because in the end, the reason that arts are so easily cut in the schools is because communities don't rise up. And so we see that as holding ourselves, as in our communities, accountable. So we see our role in educating our community in terms of the importance of music education, the impact that it has, as being critical. So all of our programs have parent advisory groups. They have a huge impact on the programs themselves. And we also often call out our community and community leaders and say, you are the ones who have to stand up when arts is immediately getting cut. Yeah, or
Especially for the youth development programs, how do you interest young people initially in participating and taking the music lessons that you offer?
It's a great question in terms of how do we engage young people to begin with. We have extensive community interactions and outreach that we have. So our director of education, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, is out in the community far more often than she's in the office. And we work with churches, and she is basically a known quantity in the communities that we go into. We simply cannot, do a nice brochure and send it out and be like, isn't this great? We have this great program. The communities that we work in simply don't operate that way. A lot of the schools that we're in, they actually have washing machines in the basement so they can wash kids' clothes and, and of course have high, free and reduced lunch programs, things like that. And so we look at how can we best interact, and so we're working with faith-based institutions, and often one of our big targets for our programs is that we try to identify a champion at a particular school or community center. And then our education director works very closely with them as we look at recruitment. And I would say it's not just recruitment, but retention is huge. So when we started our Overture program, we probably had almost half of the students dropping out. And now we're probably up to about 90%. And that's because we simply won't let them. So we have a whole process that we go through that is only possible because we know their principals, we know their parents, and or we know the parents in the neighborhood who know them. The last thing I would add about that is whenever possible, we try to focus on having parent-to-parent contact, not sphinx-to-parent contact. So we try and engage that as much as possible. We find that parents and families are far more receptive when that type of information comes from friends and family.
You answered part of the question I had already. But what is the typical age of entrance of the kids into the program, and what would be their typical age of matriculation?
We have, again, it depends on our program. So the competition, which is of course a very high level, we have our junior division that's up to the age of 18. And Randall actually is one of our youngest winners at the age of 13. We've had entrants as young as 11. And then our senior division is 18 to 26. For our Overture program, we are going kind of younger and younger. And so now we're kind of even 7 or 8 years old up through about, kind of 12 to 14. And then our Preparatory Music Institute and our summer programs are basically 11 to 17.